Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy. And thank you so much for joining me for it. So, Lucasfilm announced yesterday that a new movie is being added to the roster of movies in development. It is called The Mandalorian and Grogu, yes, another on-the-nose title. And it will be written and directed by Jon Favreau, and it is going to, quote-unquote, lead the slate of film releases for Lucasfilm, which means that this movie that we had no idea about previously seems to be the movie that is now going to be the one released in May of 2026. Previously, we thought that was going to be the Charmaine Obaid-Chinoy movie, which is the new Jedi Order movie featuring Daisy Ridley. Now, it seems, based on this new news, that that one's going to be pushed back, and it seems that it would be the likely candidate for the December of 2026 movie slot. Actually, the Department of Corrections is handing me a note. We don't know who's writing this thing. It only says, the official release only says that it's directed by Jon Favreau and it's going to be produced by Favreau, Filoni, and Kathleen Kennedy. And at the end of this news release, they also officially confirmed the news that Dave Filoni is working on a second season of the Ahsoka series. Now, when we talk about this being a new movie added to the slate that we had no idea about before, we can say that as well because the release also mentions a Dave Filoni-led movie, so these are separate projects entirely. They basically restated all three of the movies that they announced at Star Wars Celebration last year. So this one is an entirely new thing. And actually, Kathleen Kennedy says that this is a new story that is going to be a perfect fit for the big screen. So that leaves a question which hopefully Lucasfilm will answer sooner rather than later, which is, what does this mean for season 4 of The Mandalorian? So as far as we knew, and as far as we know, as of the time of recording of this episode, which is the evening of January 9th, Season 4 of The Mandalorian has already been written. It was actually completed before February of 2023. Apparently, Jon Favreau did an interview somewhere in February of 23 where he said, yeah, all the scripts are written, it's already done. The plan, as far as we knew, had been for The Mandalorian to go into production prior to the writer's strike and then the actor's strike, so that all basically delayed it, and we haven't heard anything about it since. The only publication so far that's reporting that Mandalorian Season 4 is still in development is Deadline Hollywood, one of the Hollywood trades. So they're saying that this new movie does not wipe out Mando Season 4, that they are two distinct things. However, every other publication seems to be jumping to the conclusion that there will not be a Season 4 of The Mandalorian, that Season 4 of The Mandalorian is actually being turned into a movie instead. So, oh boy, we're going to go through this whole discourse again. That's why I'm hoping Lucasfilm will put the rumor mongering to bed about this as soon as possible. The other thing that was bubbling up around it had to do with Pedro Pascal and the fact that he wasn't necessarily announced as part of the release. Not that he had to be, but there's also been, some talk about how he hasn't necessarily been on set for filming of The Mandalorian, and that he gets to do a lot of voiceover work basically now, and that people get to wear the Mandalorian costume and do all the action stuff, and that they know how to do the little micro movements to convey emotion and whatnot, and that Pedro really just has to focus on the voiceover work now. So just because they didn't announce him, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. There's also, people looking into the things that he's involved with, including season 2 of The Last of Us, for example, and saying he's not going to have time to do it or whatever. But yeah, there are definitely ways around it for sure. So The Mandalorian and Grogu is the next movie. They say it's going to go into production sometime in 2024, which basically lines up with what we were saying at the beginning of the year about movies in production and about the fact that there would be a Star Wars movie going into production this year. It would have to be the case if they were going to hit that May 2026 date. Now we have a little bit more confirmation from Lucasfilm saying that there will be one, and it's going to be this new one, The Mandalorian and Grogu. So that's what we've got, and as more news breaks about this major announcement, and we'll talk about it here on the show. I would love to know what you think about the idea of a new movie called The Mandalorian and Grogu heading to the big screen. If you're catching this on YouTube, hey, comments are right there. And if you are catching an audio version, please head over to the blog post for this show's episode at sw7x7.com and let me know what you think there. So that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. If you enjoy the podcast, whether today or any day that you've listened to it, I hope you'll consider sharing it with other Star Wars fans and friends that you're connected with. And I hope you'll consider subscribing or following, depending on what the app you use calls it. And also, I hope you'll consider leaving a rating or review also on whatever app that you care for. So it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for this episode as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyrighted by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.